version, we're shifting gears a little bit from wood trim to energy efficiency. And so I'm on page 2, 403H. So what I want you to know first and foremost for the test is that if a house is built properly, you should expect to keep most of your heat. So kind of think back to that analogy I'm always using about a thermos. If you build your house, your thermos correctly, most of the heat you put in should stay there. And now we're going to kind of figure out how and why. So page 3 is a really important chart. I do not expect you to memorize it. I want you to know 2 things. So these are all the different insulation types and their R value. Does anybody know what R value is?
How much it insulates? How much it insulates?
Yep. Resistance to thermal loss. So how good of a blanket is this insulation type? And there's all different types. So on the far left, you see at the top batt, then loose fill, then board stock, then spray applied. And then the next column over, you see what the product is. Glass fiber, mineral fiber, etc. And the next column is RSI, and then in brackets is R over inch. So when we say R value, we're kind of saying how much insulation is in your wall and how warm is it keeping your house? How long is it keeping onto the heat? The more R value, the better. When we talk about RSI, resistance to heat loss, that is, you can think of it as the metric system, used a lot in Europe. And the R over IN is R value per inch. When we have R value, how much insulation am I getting per inch when I lay it in? So remember my walls of a typical house, these models here. I'm building a 5.5 inch wall. So if I filled it with any one of those insulation types, I'd have 5.5 inches of insulation. Therefore, whatever type of insulation I'm using, that's how much R value. And again, the more R value I have, the better off you are. So if we go to the top left of the chart and we have batt insulation and we have glass fiber, I'm getting an R value of 3.2 per inch. If I go to the, and so sorry if I didn't say, the chart is listed in the least amount of R value per inch at the top, and it goes down. As you go down through the chart, you get better R value, so the very bottom is the best. So the top, the worst bang for my buck, is glass fiber. And at the bottom I have spray foam, and the very bottom one is polyurethane, and I'm going to get between 5.5 and 6.5 R value per inch. I'm double the R value of glass fiber. You all with me on that? What am I every time you've gone into a wall in the attic, in behind gyprock and everything, what kind of insulation's back there?
Glass fiber.
Glass fiber, kind of that pink stuff, looks like pink cotton candy. It doesn't taste as good as pink cotton candy, trust me. I'm getting 3.2 R value per inch with that product. If I use spray foam, I would double or more than double my R value. Just looking at those numbers, what do I want to insulate my house with?
Yeah, but which one is expensive?
Spray foam.
But then before the answer was even given, yeah, but which one's more expensive? For sure, spray foam is way more expensive. It's about 2 to 3 times more once it's all said and done. You buy it, you apply it, you leave. How long does a typical house last?
90 years.
90 years. So if it's 3 times as much, is the financial incentive to be there to spray foam?
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably, yep. So if I had a wall that's 5.5 inches, I would have about 17.5 R value on my walls with pink bat. If I use spray foam, I'd have 36 R value. So well more than double. So if I have bat insulation, which all of us, including me, have in our walls, you will see in all the advertisements of the house you're gonna buy, R20 wall. It's an R20 wall. What did I just say it was? 17.6. So is it R20? Nope, 17.6. Is that probably accurate, or is it better or worse than that? Worse. So let me go through this with you. You can write these bullet points down. The R value in your house isn't what it says because of thermal bridging in a traditional house where there is thermal bridging. So in the model that's above Kelly's head, I have nothing but thermal bridges. My house is designed with lots and lots of thermal bridging. So I take my house from 17.6 R value, which is sold at 20, and now I'm bringing it down to 1/3. So I'm about, I'm eliminating 1/3. So I'm about 12 R value. I'm almost half of what they told me it is. And then write this down. A 5% gap in insulation results in a 50% reduction in R value. 5% gap in insulation in your walls results in a 50% reduction in R value. If you had to get, how many have seen the inside of my walls? No one. No, you haven't. How many would bet $1,000 that there's a 5% gap in my walls? Pretty safe bet. How many people have worked construction? The folks that are laying bat insulation, do they have a doctorate degree in insulation installing? Or are they right out of high school, maybe failed out of high school? Right out of high school. Did they really, really, really care and try hard to make those gaps go away?
Absolutely.
Or are they hurrying up because it's Friday and it's almost 4?
Depends on the guy.
I've never seen a house that wouldn't have a 5% gap. So my point is, now we went from R20, which is what it's sold as, and now I'm down to about R5. You saw the math. And that's just 4 bullet points that we talked about. With spray foam, with other products, one of them being spray foam, I take a gun, and I may not really care, may have the same attitude as the guy laying pink bat, but I'm using a spray gun and I go, and then what happens? You've all seen videos of it, I'm sure. It expands. So all I do is take my gun and it's spraying out, kind of like spray paint. Hits, as soon as it hits, mixes with oxygen, it expands. When it expands, and we've taken half a chance of being careful about it, we hope that it expands and fills all those gaps. So a pretty good chance that my R36 is a whole lot closer than R36 than my R20 bat insulation that's probably more like R5. Does that make sense? And so yes, Venus is a very good consumer, and she'd probably be one of my best clients because she's conscientious, she's thinking, she's trying to make the right decisions. But is the right decision for my bank account to use spray foam? Pretty good argument, yes. Does that make sense? So there are lots of moving parts that you have to consider, and definitely I only touched the tip of the iceberg, but those should be the kind of decisions, at very least, you make on your own home. if you're into the industry upon graduation, you should be helping people do that. And again, I would suggest if you're helping people make those decisions, you would rise to the top of the industry very, very quickly and have a very lucrative career, because most people aren't talking about that. Okay, so what I want you to know for the test, long story short, is the worst R value is bat, glass bat, and the best is spray foam polyurethane. Top left of the chart, bottom left of the chart are the two I want you to memorize. The others you can just kind of be aware. I wouldn't expect you to memorize them. Good? The other thing you can write on this page, which isn't listed in the book but should be, and is a repeat, but I just want to drive the point home. The 3 ways heat moves, or maybe a better way of wording it, the 3 ways I'm going to lose heat out of my house after I pay a whole bunch of money for it are conduction, convection, radiation. Conduction, convection, radiation. Conduction, as I touch it, this pot is very hot. I'm burning myself. Conduction, hot air rises, cold air falls. Moving currents. Radiation, potbelly stove, giving off beautiful heat. The last thing I want you to write on this page is any insulation, every single insulation type on that chart on page 3 only fights against 2 of those thermal mass movers. The one that none of those fight against is radiation. I think we talked about this in class the other day. If you don't want aliens reading your thoughts, what do? Tinfoil hat, absolutely, that's a no-brainer. But you can also do that on your house. You can put a foil wrap on your house. We're going to get to that in a minute. If the earth were round, the aliens couldn't read your thoughts, but because we have a flat disk that we live on, the aliens can read your thoughts better, but that's a different, we'll move on. I don't know how important it is because they're black and white photos, and etc. But that insulation, page 4, loose fill is page bottom of page 4. That's typically recycled blue jeans that the blue dye has been taken out of. Cellulose is page 5, and that's chopped up newspaper. I want you to know page 6, that's a test, EPS. What does EPS stand for? Expanded polystyrene. EPS, that's a test question direct. What does it stand for? Expanded polystyrene. And what is that? That's those white beads that I passed around earlier. That's that foam that are little white, like BBs, and they're expanded in a mold, and those BBs mush together and form whatever they are. Old school coffee cups were EPS, expanded polystyrene. And why is that important for you to know? Round balls don't fit together and make something waterproof. So is that choice of insulation waterproof?
No.
No. And we definitely 100% want our house waterproof. Might be a good choice as long as we're aware of it and we add stuff to it, but we gotta know just because it's foam, it's not waterproof.
How does that work with all the loose?
Just
oh,
say.
sorry.
What's that? Because they had a layer of shellac around the outside.
How does that work with the bat type and the loose? Because those don't seem very watertight either.
How does it work with, ask me, are the ones on the previous page?
Yeah, like
Those aren't at all waterproof.
those aren't at all, right?
But they're meant for inside wall cavities, and we put products on the inside and outside of the wall cavity that make them waterproof, and we're going to get to that later in the lecture. Good? Okay, EPS, expanded polystyrene. The other one is XPX, extruded polystyrene. XPS, extruded polystyrene. And typically, those look like solid foam. There are little bubbles, but they're almost microscopic. And almost always when you buy those sheet goods at a building supply store, they're baby blue or pink. Not always, but they're often like that. And those that are extruded polystyrene, XPS, are waterproof. Self-word, I thought I had a piece over there, but I don't wanna go looking. There's also wood fiber insulation, I'm on page 8. And page 9, there's cellulose spray. So remember, cellulose was chopped up newspaper. It's salty, I know that, because we used to insulate attics all the time and it would get in my mouth. Not the best for women, but that would happen. And the salt is a chemical that makes it fire retardant. I'm sure it's not good to eat, don't. You could just learn from my experience. And what they do for most of these, if it's going into a wall cavity, we just spray it in, chopped up newspaper. If we're spraying it on a ceiling or a wall or anywhere else, we mix glue into it. And that makes it stick on the wall. Next time you go out into the scissor lift room, look at the attic, look at the ceiling, and you'll see cellulose fiber that's stuck to the wall. It looks like popcorn or very textured ceiling. That's this product, and it's staying up on the ceiling because it's mixed in with glue.
Help with the heat?
Help with
The heat to keep the
heat, absolutely. It is a fire retardant, but it absolutely is an insulation. Page 10, there's your polyurethane spray. Page 11, not a perfect product because if the house moves, it isn't a glue, so it won't keep the house from moving, and if it moves, you get cracks. Page 12, like I said, radiant barriers. So, not any, but many of those products that we have listed on page 2, you can put a foil backer on them. And then that product does fight against all three: convection, conduction, and radiation. But unless you have the foil backer, it won't fight against radiation. There's a guy locally that invented, it's just bubble pop, like for packaging, that is heat resistant. And it is wrapped in foil, and it's a jacket that you put over your hot water tank. And genius, because it's all dirt cheap, it's all right there. You can just go to the hardware store and buy all those materials, and it really makes a difference on your water tank. Thank you. Okay, vapor barrier. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, quick question.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen in stores the foam, either the expanded or the extruded polystyrene with,
You have with foil. With foil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just like a combination?
It's just an addition. It's just taking that product one step further, which is here.
Oh, okay.
So this is expanded EPS, not XPS, expanded polystyrene. Take 1 or 2 beads, but don't break this apart. But you can see they're just little balls of foam that are expanded into this. And then there's a plastic backer. Where I got the job site, I got it from, they put a plastic coating on to make it waterproof on this side. But there's also a foil backer that was factory made as well. I'll pass that around. This fights against all three because the foil fights against radiation, and any insulation does convection and conduction, and then also radiation because of the foil. And it's waterproof because that foil backer and this backer are waterproof, not because of the foam. You'll get this same product. You have 2 choices. I could buy this exact same product that's breathable, and all they do is run the sheets through a knife, and it goes slice, 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 and it just puts little slits in the foil. And the idea is when radiation hits it, it hits the mirror and bounces off before it finds those little cuts, and water can migrate through it and get out. And so I would have a breathable wall for areas that I want a breathable wall. I'll pass that around.
Where would you want the breathable wall?
So, all walls should be breathable. All walls should be allowed to, get rid of moisture. I'm probably gonna get to that later, so we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so for example, Brandon, what number am I thinking of?
8.
Wrong. Foil backer, you can't read your thoughts. Okay, people?
They're not
Johnny?
protected from the 5G wave, so they're behind you.
That's true.
This will be fun to put online.
Yeah. Okay, so that was, oh, we didn't cover that. So vapor barrier. Vapor barrier, is what's keeping my house. So remember there was a question, well, cellulose and all that are not waterproof at all. Why would I ever choose those? It's because they're made for an interior pocket of a wall. And then we know they're not waterproof, so we make the wall waterproof after we fill it with insulation. And so vapor barrier goes on the inside of your house. So pretend this is my home, we're on the inside. Just behind the gyprock would be vapor barrier. Or probably what you refer to on the job site as poly. Hang up the poly. And so what that does is, remember, every human just living in here all day, all of us are giving off about 1.25 liters of water a day, breathing, perspiring, being here. So there would be gallons of water that are in the air that we have to get rid of. So what we don't want it to do is get inside the wall and make our insulation wet. So we have a vapor barrier just behind the gyprock, and that cuts the water from getting from the inside to out. So far we've protected the wall halfway. We've kept the moisture from inside the house from getting into the wall, migrating out. Page 14. That vapor barrier is polyethylene film, or what we call poly, like I said, and there's a picture of it. 6 mil is what is standard, the thickness that we have to use. There is also waterproof paint, specifically for vapor barrier. That's on page 15. The problem with paint is it cracks. If this is my waterproof barrier, you can see that it peels up quite easily. And even if I bump it with my fingernails, I'm gonna scratch it. So it's not the best line of defense. Poly would be much better. But it is to code, it is legal. Smart barriers, on the inside, we're talking the inside walls, you can have smart barriers and they act like Gore-Tex, they breathe. But typically we use poly for the expense, and we'll get to a breathing wall here in a minute. We also have page 17, spray cans of foam. So spray foam is the best. It has the best R value, and it fills the gaps the best. Therefore, having minimal thermal bridging and minimal air gappage, maximizing R value. So when I install doors and windows, that's a perfect product to use for filling the gaps, which is what you see on page 17, and what he's doing on page 18. Very common now, page 20, we put foam on the outside of the house. We stud up the wall, we put foam on the outside, and over the top of that we put our siding. So because these foam boards are thick, you can have people add in 2 inches of foam, 4 inches of foam, 6 inches of foam. We have long spikes with big washer heads to attach that foam to your house. And that's what you see on page 20. The bottom picture, those white discs, or on the top, the black ones, those are the big washers. You can imagine that if I drove, I could probably poke my finger through there if I punched hard enough. So if I used a nail, there's no strength in that, I would just drive the nail right through. So I need a big washer head to take the pressure of that to keep it from punching through. That's what you see on page 20. 21, they're being very proactive. Anytime you put a hole in the sheathing on the outside of the house, you should coat it with a waterproof barrier, making it airtight and waterproof. That's what they're showing there. Page 22, he's doing the same thing but on the outside. All your joints, all your holes, you're covering, you're making it as watertight and air, allowing air to move as minimally as possible. Okay, moisture barriers. So we talked about vapor barrier. Vapor barrier is on the inside. I'm breathing right now and moisture is coming out. 1.25 liters a day on average. That's vapor. I have also moisture. Moisture is attacking my house from outside. So vapor barrier is the waterproof membrane on the inside. Moisture barrier is the waterproof membrane on the outside. Does that make sense? And what I'd like you to know is in cold climates, we live in a cold climate, that moisture barrier goes to the outside. So just remember that. Vapor barrier inside, moisture barrier outside. If we lived in warm climates, if we lived in the Bahamas, we would build our houses opposite. But I don't want to confuse you. So just remember, vapor barrier in, moisture barrier out. On page 25, you see a picture of dimpled foundation membrane. Really, really thick plastic. You could probably chop it with an axe a couple times before you got through it. That is below grade. When I have my foundation, I put my wood or concrete foundation in and then line it with that membrane. The dimples keep it standing off the wall, so should water get in behind that membrane, it weeps off right away and goes straight down to the bottom into a weeping tile. It's very, very durable, so when I backfill the house with rock and shale and dirt, I'm not tearing it up. And then for the rest of the life of the house, as I'm planting shrubs and doing all that sort of stuff around the side of my house, hopefully I don't breach that membrane. So you can see it's bolted on. If you touched it, it's really, really thick and heavy. I don't know the plastic to give you an example of what it would be like. Okay, page 26. I want you to know this for the test. Basements, I think I told you already, basements are, in terms of energy efficiency, basements are a really, really bad choice. And to make that choice worse, we make it out of concrete. So concrete is a wet sponge, very difficult to heat, leaks air and moisture all the time, very prone to cracking. And all those black arrows that you see on the picture on page 26 are moisture and air leakage, which kind of is everywhere. They're pointing everywhere. So not a great place. Don't put something in cold, wet soil, and don't make it out of concrete, which is what we all do, including me. We're going to skip ahead. It's showing you how to insulate a basement, but that goes beyond what we teach. Actually, if you go to page 34, this is what they recommend for insulating a basement, just so you know. If you're looking at the picture, on the left is outside in the soil, and the right side of the picture is inside your basement. You can see touching this between the soil and the concrete is that dimpled membrane, that black line. Then you have your concrete wall. And then on the inside, you have right tight to the concrete, rigid foam. And then you have a batt insulation over the top of that. Why would I have rigid foam? Why would I have my insulation on the inside of the house?
The moisture?
Because I want to keep it dry. and I want to keep the heat inside the house. I don't want to heat that concrete slab if I don't have to. Why do I have rigid foam up against concrete, not the batt insulation?
Moisture.
Rigid foam's waterproof. So if and when, probably if, not when, water gets into the concrete, my rigid foam insulation is uptight against it and it's not letting water through. And then my dry batt insulation is inside of that. And hopefully, if it's not too big a leak, it'll still work properly and I'll be okay. Page 38. I'm not testing you on this, it's just another piece of information. What they do now in modern builds, one tool they can use in modern builds is they'll put the house under positive pressure. They'll close all the doors and windows and they'll fill the house with air like they're filling up a balloon, pushing really hard with air. You walk into the house, your ears would pop. And then they put these atomizers on those tripods you can see there, and they're spraying out spray foam and latex. And very small, like microscopic. And what they'll do is they'll fill the air with, fill the house with positive air, positive pressure, and the air, like I've said 100 times, Mother Nature's trying to reach equilibrium. So all that pressure is trying to leave the house. Where is it leaving the house? All the little nooks and crannies, all the holes, all the defects that us humans put into it when we built it. And what's going through those little defects are microscopic latex and spray foam. So as soon as it goes through that little hole, then it expands, closes up that hole and seals it off. And that's how they're making the best net zero homes, by filling up all those holes.
But in the reality, that's how often happens. How often people who's building houses do that?
I would say very little. It's very expensive and I've only seen videos of it. It's very effective, but I'm sure it's very expensive. So,
I have to be before I paint my house.
yes. Should you do it before you paint your house? 100%.
How old's
Because
your house? How old's your house?
No, the new one. House has to be a new one.
as it's built, yeah. The best thing is always to do this stuff before you swing a hammer. Okay, page 40 and 41. There's some products we can use to fill up those holes. On the top of page 40, or I guess it's the middle, is silicone. Silicone is everything we want. I think I already talked about this. Waterproof, mold proof, stretchable so it's not gonna crack, huge adhesion. Everything is perfect about it except we can't paint it. It sheds paint. So a really good product to use behind the scenes, etc. Before someone asks, I'll say yes, there is a paintable product. I don't have much experience with it, to be perfectly honest. I started using it maybe 5 years ago. It seems to hold up very well. My gut tells me it wouldn't be as good as pure silicone. Do you have an opinion?
I never, much use of it, yeah.
Yeah, if you're using silicone, I'd suggest you use silicone, and if you need a paintable product, you need something else. So I'd like you to know that it's a wonder drug, but it's not paintable. There's a downside. Page 41, there's two things I'd like you to know. First, you can put butyl caulking, B-U-T-Y-L, butyl, like tar-based. And that's very, very good product when used appropriately. So it's tar-based, it's gonna get everywhere. But it's tar-based, so it's very waterproof, very weather resistant, very stretchable, like silicone or rubber. And therefore, if I put it in a gasket, I can be pretty comfortable that it's gonna stay there forever. It's not gonna dry up and crack and get water penetration. So that's one I'd like you to know. The next one is the top of page 41, which is Acoustiseal or acoustical sealant. I'm using that, and when I put my vapor barrier, the interior waterproofing membrane on my house, I'm putting poly up, big sheets of plastic, and I'm basically stapling and gluing them up on my walls all over inside. And they don't sell a sheet of plastic that's this shape, so I have to piece pieces together to make this shape. And when I piece them together, I overlap the plastic, and to keep that waterproof, I put a bead of acoustical sealant caulking between them, and I squish it together. So acoustical sealant is the same thing, like butyl caulking. Never dries, always gooey, always sticky, very elastic. So it's meant specifically to be waterproof, never fail, always movable. It's a perfect product for that.
Is butyl caulking black?
Yeah,
It comes in multiple colors now. Yeah. It's mostly used for roofing, like steel roofing. A lot of people don't have it, they get to match the roof color.
Oh,
Okay.
that's cool.
I didn't know that. The rest, I'm just making sure, the rest is just informative. If you go to page 57, so you can see this house is gonna be high energy efficiency. They wrap the house in foam on the outside. It says in the description that they've used extruded polystyrene, which is the highest R value of all the board insulation, and it's waterproof. What's not waterproof is where they put those sheets together, the joints. So you can see on that picture, they taped the joints, so they wanna make that waterproof.
It says underneath that they have shiplap joints, so that would help, right?
Yeah, you know what he means, they mean
It's
by
like
that?
one over the other, like.
Yep, the foam, so if this is my house and I live inside it, I don't know what that is. And then I put my foam board down. My pieces fit together like, they'd be zinging tight, but they fit together like that. And so much more airtight, and when rain comes down, typically it'll just keep going down like that into the joint.
Looking a little round in that picture.
It's not, I'm looking around?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
that's pretty rough.
we like cookies in that house. And these are very square. And often they'll put a bead of caulking right there to make it more waterproof. And I think that's it. Let me just make sure. Yeah. Any questions on that? Okay, thanks folks. Have a good night. You're welcome to leave or you're welcome to stay till 4.